Evelyn Carter had always chased unusual stories, but nothing compared to what she found in Gila. Tucked deep in the misty forests of Oregon, the town was a place that seemed forgotten by time. It barely appeared on maps, and its population of 312 hadn't changed in decades. What caught Evelyn's attention was a chilling pattern. Every 10 years on the night of the blood moon, someone disappeared without a trace. Not a single clue, no evidence of violence, just a vanished soul, always aged 27. She arrived a day before the next blood moon. The air was thick with pine and suspicion. Locals eyed her with a mixture of curiosity and dread as she walked through the town square. The diner looked like it hadn't changed since the 1950s, and the gas station's sign creaked eerily in the wind. The town clock had stopped years ago at 12:03, and no one bothered to fix it. Evelyn checked into the town's only inn, where an elderly woman named Martha handed her the key with a warning. Room 3. And if you're here for the story, don't go looking in the woods. Her voice trembled slightly. That warning only deepened Evelyn's curiosity. That night, she walked the perimeter of the town, noting strange markings on the trees, symbols resembling runes, some fresh, some faded. She documented everything. The next morning, she pored over old census records and police reports in the town library, which was oddly well stocked but dimly lit. Her motel room soon became a detective's den, walls covered in photos, timelines, maps. The pattern was too precise. Every 10 years, always on a blood moon, always someone who had just turned 27. The missing were never found. No searches turned up clues. In some cases, their homes were left in perfect condition, food still on the table. She met Sheriff Thomas Blake later that day. He was in his 60s, eyes like cold steel, and not interested in talking. "Miss Carter, some truths are dangerous. You don't belong here," he said. But when she pushed, he admitted he had lost his own brother during the blood moon of 1985. "He turned 27 that week," he murmured. "He went into the forest to prove it was all nonsense. We never saw him again." Later, Evelyn met David, a quiet boy standing at the edge of the woods. He spoke in whispers. "They're watching," he said. "They never blink. The forest listens. If you stay too long, it remembers you." When she asked about the missing, he said, "My sister Lena disappeared. She had just turned 27. She said she could hear music in the trees. After the blood moon, she was gone." Disturbed, Evelyn returned to the inn. That night, Martha knocked softly on her door. "I shouldn't do this, but I can't bear another vanishing." She led Evelyn to an old root cellar behind the building. Inside was a wrapped bundle, an ancient book, leather-bound, its pages brittle with age. It was written in Latin and another language Evelyn couldn't recognize. There were drawings, people tied to trees, eyes watching from the shadows, and a name that kept appearing, Elowen. "She was the first," Martha whispered, "taken by the forest over 100 years ago. A healer. They said she was a witch. They tied her to the tree during the first blood moon. Her spirit never left." Evelyn found a passage translated roughly as, "On the night of crimson light the chosen shall cross. The forest remembers, the forest reclaims." As the blood moon approached, Evelyn set up cameras at the forest's edge. The sky turned red, casting an eerie glow across the town. Wind howled without cause. Animals were silent. The air grew heavy, almost thick, as if time had slowed. Just after midnight, she heard a scream echoing from the woods. She ran toward it and found Sarah, one of the locals Evelyn had briefly interviewed, clutching a tree as something invisible pulled at her. Evelyn reached for her hand, but Sarah was yanked backward by a force that defied logic. She vanished, and the forest fell silent. Evelyn reviewed the footage, only static. But when she slowed the frame rate, a single image flashed, a twisted figure with hollow eyes, standing at the base of a tree, arms outstretched. Elowen. Determined, Evelyn returned to Sheriff Blake. "We need to find the tree," she said. The sheriff finally relented and handed her a broken compass. "This was found at the base of a twisted oak. It always points to the heart of the forest. My father said it pointed to Elowen, but no one who followed it ever returned." Evelyn, armed with the compass and her camera, headed into the woods. David appeared beside her, refusing to stay behind. "She called me too. I want to know what happened to Lena." The compass spun, then locked onto a direction. The trees grew stranger, bark like burned flesh, branches reaching like fingers. Hours passed. The forest pulsed, whispering in voices neither of them recognized. Eventually, they reached a clearing. At its center stood a massive blackened tree, larger than any Evelyn had ever seen. It looked diseased, bleeding dark sap, surrounded by bones. A circle of stones with ancient carvings encircled the tree. The compass cracked in her hand. Suddenly, the tree opened like a mouth. Inside, Evelyn saw flickering visions, souls screaming silently, their eyes pleading. Elowen stood among them, her mouth sewn shut with vines, her eyes glowing. The forest spoke. Choose. A soul for a soul. One stays, the others go. Vines shot out, grabbing David. He cried out, "Don't let it take me." Evelyn leapt forward, freeing him. "Take me instead." She screamed. The forest paused. Not 27. Not yet. Suddenly, the tree closed. Everything went dark. When Evelyn opened her eyes, she was back at the forest's edge. David lay beside her, breathing but unconscious. The compass was in pieces. She returned to town, but something was different. People avoided her. Martha wouldn't answer her questions. Her footage was gone, overwritten by static. But she remembered every detail. Evelyn left Halliwood and never published the story. No one would believe it. But sometimes when she closed her eyes, she saw Elowen's gaze. A month later, Evelyn received a package. No return address. Inside was a photograph, black and white, of the tree, and beneath it, written in shaky handwriting, "You were chosen. Next time you turn 27. Every 10 years, the forest reclaims another. And now it waits for Evelyn.